Night has settled over Philadelphia. A grainy, black-and-white surveillance camera stares across a quiet industrial stretch near Frankfort Junction. In the distance, a bright headlight cuts the dark. The frame flickers, then a burst of sparks erupts as a train knifes into a tight left curve. The picture blooms white for a heartbeat, and the scene drops back into shadow. In that brief, brutal flash, Amtrak train 188 has left the rails. It is May 12, 2015, just past 9:21 p.m. The Northeast Regional is northbound out of 35th Street Station, bound for New York. The curve at Frankfort Junction is a known bottleneck, a 50-mile-per-hour bend cut into an otherwise fast, straight corridor. The train enters the curve far too fast. Seconds later, cars are twisted, some on their sides, downed wires hissing above. Emergency calls flood the night. 8 passengers will not make it home. Scores more will be treated across the city. Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board arrive within hours. They pull data from the locomotive's recorders, interview surviving crew, and map every scar on the track. The numbers are stark. 106 miles per hour entering a 50 miles per hour curve. The engineer hit the emergency brake, but physics had the final word. The probable cause: loss of situational awareness by the engineer, an attention lapse at the worst possible place. The report adds an unambiguous coda: positive train control. The speed enforcement technology designed for exactly this scenario would have prevented the wreck. In the days after, the federal government orders immediate speed controls at key curves, and Amtrak accelerates safety upgrades.
By the end of this year, when you have positive train control in here, it will not happen again.
When you heard that this train was 106 miles an hour in a 50-mile limit?
By December 2015, Amtrak completes PTC on the New York-Washington stretch of the Northeast Corridor, hard coding into the railroad, a digital backstop against human error. The surveillance clip that aired in newscasts, the same flash and shower of sparks you can still find in anniversary coverage, became a shorthand for the stakes. Technology doesn't erase risk, but here it showed a way to bound it. In the aftermath, investigators cataloged the survival story as carefully as the crash. How some windows held and others didn't. How first responders threaded through wreckage. How quickly hospitals spun up mass casualty protocols. The board's recommendations read like a blueprint for prevention. Better distraction management training, occupant protection upgrades, and an ironclad timetable for PTC. The timeline and the physics are not in dispute. They're written in data and steel. What the camera caught, the flare, the suddenness, is the human side of the lesson. Speed plus a sharp curve leaves no margin. And so when you see that grainy frame and the flash at the edge of a Philadelphia night, you are witnessing a system on the cusp of change. 8 lives lost, many more altered. A corridor re-engineered so that a mistake like this meets a governor, not a grave. It's not closure, but it is a consequence. A cell phone camera is rolling on Main Street in Biloxi. The lens jitters, zooms, steadies. The picture is deceptively ordinary. A charter bus angled at a railroad crossing. The red lights are flashing now. Gates are down. The bus doesn't move. You can hear horns. You can hear people yelling from off-screen. The bus is hung up, grounded on the hump of a high-profile crossing. The eastbound freight train arrives into frame. There's hardly time to think. The impact shoves the coach forward like a toy. Then the phone drops low as the camera operator runs. This is March 7th, 2017, just after 2:11 p.m. on a clear day. The coach carries 49 senior tourists plus the driver, relocating between casinos along the coast. The crossing isn't just active, lights, bells, gate arms, it's also steep-crowned. The coach's frame bottoms out on the far side and sticks fast. Inside, the driver opens the door and begins a hurried evacuation. Down the line, the CSX engineer throws the train into emergency, but there are seconds left and hundreds of tons in motion. The locomotive strikes the coach broadside and pushes it roughly 259 feet down the rails before coming to a stop. 4 passengers are killed. The driver and 37 passengers sustain injuries ranging from minor to serious. The NTSB will later pull together a minute-by-minute reconstruction. It's unnervingly precise. The crossing system activates about 29 seconds before the train arrives. The horn blows almost continuously. The stuck coach rocks and lurches as the driver tries to free it, unsuccessfully. What the camera shows adds a physical jolt to that timeline. One moment, the bus is an obstacle. The next, it's wreckage being pushed east. The board's conclusion doesn't point to a single villain. It points to geometry and guidance. High-profile crossings are a known hazard for long-wheelbase vehicles with low ground clearance, and the guidance on how to identify and mitigate them was inadequate. The recommendations ripple outward: signage that explicitly excludes certain vehicles, better coordination between railroads and road agencies, and design changes to reduce humped profiles where possible. The tape from Biloxi tends to circulate online with a sensational edge, but the lessons are dry and practical. Charter itineraries and school routes need to flag low-clearance vehicles before they meet a hump. Dispatchers need pathways to warn highway agencies when a crossing proves troublesome. Engineers need the confidence that an activated crossing equals a clear one, or the tools to slow trains automatically when the unexpected appears. The video is unforgettable. The fix list is unglamorous. That's how safety often works. In the end, 4 families grieved, dozens recovered, and the footage, the hard proof of what happened and how fast, moved this conversation from some crossings are quirky to some crossings are not safe for certain vehicles, period. Watch it once, and you never unlearn the timing. 29 seconds is forever in theory, and no time at all in the real world. The surveillance camera looks across a dim rail yard in the small hours before dawn. It's 2:27 a.m. on February 4th, 2018. You can't hear dispatchers or radios. You can't see the switch points lining a path you'd never choose. What you can see is sudden and violent. A passenger train slips off the main, rolls into a siding, and slams head-on into a standing freight. Sparks leap. The image blows out. Then the light dies back, and stillness returns. 2 Amtrak crew members, the engineer and the conductor, will not survive. Dozens aboard are hurt. That single clip, released months later by a nearby business owner, captured the moment it all went wrong. By daybreak, investigators have a working shape of the disaster. The signal system had been suspended for maintenance along this stretch of CSX's Columbia subdivision, so trains were being moved using track warrants and hand-thrown switches. One of those switches, lined to a siding for local freight, was left reversed. Amtrak's southbound Silver Star 91, cleared to proceed, followed iron and physics into the path of the parked CSX local. The 2 locomotives met at speed. The Amtrak cab was destroyed. Inside the CSX lead unit, the conductor was thrown and survived with minor injuries. The engineer had stepped out and ran to safety moments before impact. In total, 91 passengers and crew from the Amtrak consist were transported to medical facility. The NTSB's final report is precise about responsibility and prevention. Probable cause: the misaligned hand-throw switch that routed Amtrak into the siding. Contributing factors: shortcomings in rules and oversight during signal suspensions, gaps in CSX's efficiency testing program, and the absence of positive train control, which would have enforced route integrity and prevented a mainline train from entering a misaligned path. You won't see PTC in the video. What you see is what happens when it isn't there. There's nothing cinematic about the paperwork that follows. Hearings, memos, workflows rewritten so that a single reversed switch can't be the hinge of disaster. But after Cayce, signal suspension stopped being railroad jargon and became a risk profile with guardrails. The surveillance clip lost none of its punch with time. When you look at it, just a sharp flare in a cold frame, you're really looking at an argument for systems that assume humans will miss something sometime, and for 2 railroaders who didn't get to see the sun come up that Sunday. Rush hour, Interstate 5, south of Tacoma. Drivers lift their phones toward a nightmare in the sky, a train car dangling off an overpass, others scattered down an embankment and strewn across the northbound lanes. Sirens rise, brakes squeal, and traffic congeals into a sea of red lights. Up above, the southbound Amtrak Cascades 501, on its first morning of revenue service over a new bypass, has left the rails on a sharp curve and poured onto the freeway below. This is not a hypothetical. It's December 18th, 2017. By day's end, 3 passengers are dead. Dozens on the train are injured, as are drivers and passengers in vehicles crushed on the highway. The pictures from motorists and news helicopters are the images seared into memory, immediate aftermath, not the instant of derailment. The clearest live audio from the event is radio. Amtrak 501, emergency. We are on the ground. The NTSB pulls 2 critical threads, speed and readiness. The facts are not ambiguous. The train hit a 30-mile-per-hour curve at about 80 miles per hour. The probable cause rests on a failure to mitigate that hazard, on a route that wasn't yet protected by positive train control, compounded by inadequate training for the engineer on both the territory and newer equipment. The new bypass promised faster Seattle-Portland trips. It delivered a sharp reminder that infrastructure, rules, and training have to mature together before the timetable changes. Total toll: 3 passenger fatalities, 57 injuries on the train, and 8 injuries on the highway below. What does the public see? Not the moment wheels climb and cars pitch. A clip like that never went wide. Instead, the story is told through aftermath and in-cab recordings summarized by investigators. The conductor's emergency call, the inward and forward-facing locomotive cameras confirming actions and conditions, and wreckage patterns that read like a physics textbook. When agencies talk about PTC, it can sound abstract. On this day, the absence of an automated brake for overspeed at a known curve became a 3-dimensional fact. The report's critique stretches beyond one crew, one curve. It calls out safety certification for the route and the crashworthiness of certain railcars that failed to protect space for occupants. It's an uncomfortable, necessary inventory. And yet, in the middle of chaos, there's a seam of order. Motorists with dash cams and phones document the scene without getting in the way. First responders climb a lattice of steel and concrete under a highway bridge that was never meant to be a rescue site. The images you remember: the car hanging over I-5, the ladder angles, the police tape blowing in drizzle, are not drama for its own sake. They are a record of what a transportation failure looks like from the ground. In a world where not every accident is captured at the instant it happened, what we do capture can still change how we build and how we train. If there's a single narrative thread that ties DuPont to Philadelphia, Biloxi, and Cayce, it is this: we filmed enough to learn. Sometimes the tape is the impact. Sometimes it's the seconds before, or the minutes after, or the voice on a radio. Put together, those pieces fix the timeline, shape the questions, and, when we're honest, force the answers. The Cascades wreck began as a promise of minutes saved and ended as a case study in the costs of cutting too close to the edge. It didn't need a perfect clip to teach that.